Married people of Reddit, what were your first thoughts upon meeting your future spouse? My friends, who were friends with my now wife, told me that she had asked them about me after she saw me at a party. I didn't see her at that party. But the next time we were all together, my friend said, "There's that girl that was asking about you last week." My first thought was that they were making fun of me. I'm not the most social guy, so I'd go talk to this girl that was crazy beautiful. But I went up and talked to her and she was the coolest person ever. That was 21 years. 15 of them married to each other. And 2 kids ago. She's even more beautiful now at 40 than she was at 19 when I met her. Weird. I just realized I don't remember my first thought about my wife when I met her. I do remember coming home from that first date and telling my roommate I think I just met the woman I'm going to marry. That was pretty cool. Boy, this girl is really pretty. She'd never be into me. Better not try to fall for her. Her boyfriend is a ducking tool. Luckily she realized that herself not long after, and now she's stuck with me until she realizes how much of a tool I am. It's the circle of life. He happened to live with 2 really tall roommates. So he seemed super short by comparison. He isn't tall. But he isn't vertically challenged by any means either. So it's totally unfair that I remember thinking, that little guy's hot. Rather than try and give a funny answer, I'm going with what I really actually thought when I was introduced to my future wife in college. I was just absolutely struck with the feeling of how beautiful I thought she was. And how amazing she was. I had dated a fair number of girls in high school and college and thought I was totally immune from being head over heels for someone. I found out in an instant that I was wrong. My mouth went dry and my heart felt like it was beating twice as hard as usual. No joke. I'm not bulleting when I say I feel the same way today, 30 years later, when I see her. Especially if I've been away for a few days on business. I know she's gotten older. But I still see the same face I saw back then. And it makes me so happy. Every time. Sorry if that's too sappy. But I'm an incredibly lucky person. Can she really be as awkward as I feel? Right after I asked her to buy me an Americano because my wallet wasn't in my usual pocket and I thought I'd left it at home. I spent the rest of the date, after we sat down, trying not to notice my wallet poking my butt on the wrong side. Honestly, first thought was, HMM. He is so not my type. Why am I attracted to him? I couldn't put my finger on what made him so special. But I knew we were going to be together. It was like seeing a bright green light in a sea of red ones. I thought there was going to be a Great Gatsby quote at first. Oh god. There's that girl that talks all the time to every single person. Oh god. She's getting on the elevator with me. She's going to talk to me. Oh god. It's just the 2 of us. Oh god. Here it goes. I have to make actual conversation. Oh, I like your shirt. Me. Oh. Thank you. She's out of my league. After 3.5 years of marriage I still feel that way. I'm not sure how I hoodwinked her. But I've somehow managed to keep the charade going. Give yourself some credit. I'm sure in her eyes, you're more amazing than you'll ever see. Or most likely she just wants your money. Ha. Thanks. It must either be my boyish good looks or impeccable charm. Because my bank account leaves much to be desired. We were 12 and in math class. Some boys in the class were being loud and giving this new kid a weird nickname. I looked up and saw this gawky, ridiculously skinny, pasty white geek in glasses and braces. I remember thinking he had really good posture for being so short and a goofy smile. 13 years later we're married. And he became the hottie. Edit, because so many asked. I met my wife while standing in line at Starbucks. I had ordered a soy white chocolate mocha. She was standing behind me and heard my order and commented, "Hey, that's my drink but girly." I turned around and saw that she was dressed really nice and had big beautiful bright green eyes. So I blurted out, "You're an asshole. What's your name? We've been married a year now and have our first baby due in December." She walked into my brother's wedding reception with my female cousin. I turned to my cousin next to me and asked if we were related to her. He said no. I told him I was going to get me some of that. Married for almost 6 years now. I loved her look. Very pretty and earthy. She was singing on stage and has a beautiful voice. I'm a musician, so I knew I had to go talk to her afterward. I was around 21 years old, so the main thing I was thinking is, please don't be in high school. Please don't be high school. Ah yes. The early 20s. So what did you say when you got up there? Kralasetti TC. Before we were even introduced, I got one look at him and thought, oh, that's the guy. Shit. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to break up with my boyfriend and move out of our apartment. That was April of 1989. We've been married now over 20 years. Is he into me? I think he's into me. But I can't tell. From the beginning, it was clear that he was working hard to get to know me. But I couldn't tell if he was doing that because he's a genuinely nice person, which he is, or because he's a genuinely nice person who also had a thing for me. Turns out it was the second. I'm glad. I met my wife Natalie at the Trevi fountain. I was double fisting 2 Heinekens and saw her across the plaza and leaned over to my best friend and said, "I'm going to marry that girl." He said, "Shut the duck up, you're drunk." I remember my grandmother telling me about the first time she met my grandfather and how much she disliked him initially and thought he was really arrogant. Then she discovered that the way he acted then wasn't really the way he was. He was just really nervous because he thought that she was so beautiful. She gave him another chance and they ended up married for over 40 years until his death. This reminds me of my grandparents. They grew up living across the street from each other. When they were younger, like in middle school or something, my grandpa tried to kiss her while walking to school. She clocked him in the face, haha. They later fell in love in high school and got married soon after. I thought it was too easy. He seemed so easy to be around for me. And I never had to pretend I was something I wasn't. I was all me. Right from the get-go. And he was himself too. 8 years later we are married now with a home and lots of pets. My husband and I met online one afternoon and 30 minutes later he was standing on my doorstep. I opened the door, looked into his eyes and thought, now I'm home. We were married 4 months and 2 days later. Many people don't believe me, but it's absolutely true. When I first saw her, my thoughts were, she's perfect. I will marry her one day. It took about a week to get up the courage to speak to her. Not married, but I have been with the same guy for almost 16 years. The first time I saw him I thought, oh, but someone old enough to buy beer. He's kinda cute. And seems nice. I wonder what this distant stuff he's talking about is. Maybe he'll teach me. Married 12 years and 4 kids later. We don't play it anymore, but he was teaching me the rules when we had our first kiss. It was a folk dance party and I directed a wordless invitation to dance at the general vicinity of 3 girls. And my now wife responded. This is gonna sound really shallow, it probably is. But to be honest, I was slightly disappointed that it wasn't the more busty girl right next to her who responded to my invitation. We dated briefly in high school but never had sexy time. With no communication and 7 years later I figured I'd finish what I started. We've been together 1 year now. Think we're gonna get married when our financial situation is better. TLDR, the as was fat. I was standing on the curb outside the airport in Denver. I caught her looking at me. God, she was beautiful. She looked away. I looked away. I looked back and she was looking at me again. We ended up at the same conference. I was living in Indianapolis. She was living in Baltimore. We spoke at the conference. I flew home. She started to fly home. A snowstorm closed BWI and forced her flight to land in Indy. She was in Indy for 4 days. Married 13 years. 2 kids. Living the dream. Huh. There's a man on the couch. I'd left work earlier than normal and gone over to my next door neighbors to hang out a bit because I was feeling head itchy and I didn't want to spend the entire evening alone in my apartment with nothing to do. Turns out, he'd invited over an interesting guy he met at a bar. We got to talking. Then we started hanging out. Then we became best friends. Then I went through that phase where I had a big crush on him but I didn't want to do anything about it. Because I didn't want to lose his friendship if things didn't work out. Then I got to the point where I didn't care anymore. I really wanted to sleep with this guy. And now we've been married for a few years. Just had our first kid. We'll find out if our second is going to be a boy or girl next week. I didn't like her. I thought she was pompous. This was September of 2000. I had just come back to work at Linens and Things, LNT. Because I had quit the job I left LNT for. Well, I was originally the front-end supervisor. But ended up in housewares because she had taken my spot when she transferred to our store. So, my first day back is an opening shift. And we're doing the morning meeting. She is just going off on how nobody seems to know how to take a check. And how the front-end processes were supposed to work. Etc. And I'm just thinking to myself. Holy Christ on a dipstick. This chick is a rick. We slackers eventually brought her around to the dark side. But I actually had started liking her before the seduction was complete. I was on a smoke break with a friend. And I asked. What do you think about future MRS? Team Zero Obliterate? The response was immediate. Huh? Really? Are you sure? Well, we ended up going out on our first date on the 13th of January, 2001. We got married the 16th of January, 2004. I can't believe that girl arrives late and has the nerve to stop the meeting to greet the principal. She must think she's so important, is what my so thought about me. The principal was welcoming the new students, med school, and I arrived late because of my dad. My dad is also friends with the principal, so he was the one who interrupted the meeting upon our arrival. I was very embarrassed. I didn't leave a very good first impression. Yet 2 years later here we are. Also sorry I don't English very well. We met online and the first thing I thought when I saw his photo was that he had kind eyes. The first thing I thought when I saw him in person was that he was more attractive than I'd anticipated.